Hi, everyone. My name is Emily, and I am an alcoholic. And welcome to the Design for Living Big Book Study. And with me is,
Elizabeth, alcoholic.
okay, we are on page 84 on step 10, in the middle of the page. I'll start and then we'll go from there. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take a personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of life of living, as we cleaned up the past. We entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance is our code. All right. Do you want to share on that, Elizabeth, first?
Yeah, so, I come from a part of the world, and I asked people too, I was like, what happened? People would say, well, what time of day did you do your 10th step? I don't know. I've heard this was a common confusion that people got it confused with the nightly review. But, look how many times it says continue. That, they keep emphasizing action. I'm not cured. My alcoholic brain, the way that I think and react to life. The default setting for me is to think about myself and how I'm being affected. So I have to watch for this, and even let's see, and I need to stay current. I can't let things pile up. I remember when I was younger, and I'd think, oh, I need to do inventory. Oh, I need to do, stuff would pile up. I'd be walking around. I could kind of feel it. And I'm telling you now, I can't stand that. I can't live with that. The pain of walking around with that stuff gets greater and greater, and my tolerance for it becomes less and less. And notice it says, when it says continue, it means we do this all the time as we go along throughout my life, all day long. Step 10 is an all day proposition. It says we vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So we don't wait until we get all our ninth step amends done. And I know people that it's like right after 7, boom, you're on 10. You keep doing it. You're going to do 8 and 9, but you're living that, 10, 11, 10, 11, and 12, you start to actually live. And then it says, we have entered the world of the spirit. And that is one of my many favorite sentences in the book. When I have a problem with somebody and they're treating me in a way that I don't like, I can remember that with God, like I need to hear this today, really, honestly. I need to hear it today. Um, when I'm with God, when I'm in the world of the spirit, I'm okay. Does not matter what somebody's doing to Elizabeth. If there's something that, is outside of my control and something I don't like, because when everything's going my way, I don't even think about all this stuff. I'm like, we're good. Yeah, everything's great. It's when something doesn't go my way, when something causes that little knot in my chest, is like, ugh, I don't like that. This isn't what I want. That's when I need to know what's going on here. That's when I go, okay, God is God. God is running the world, not me. I don't know the plan here. I don't like what's happening, but that's I need to trust my higher power. And my sponsor would constantly say, if I had a problem, she'd say, "You're not trusting God." I can hear her saying it. Do you know what I mean? She's got this kind of way of speaking. She's like, you're not trusting God. You're not trusting God. Trust God. Ask God just constantly, like it's just a mantra. Um, but when I'm with my higher power, I can be okay no matter what's happening. Other people are going to do what they're going to do. The world's going to do what it's going to do, and I can trust that God has a plan. And that's my choice that I made on page 53. This is not an overnight matter. Again, it should continue for our lifetime. What am I watching for? Now, I'm going to tell you that I misunderstood the word selfish for a really long time. I've probably said it in here many times. I didn't know what it meant. So I didn't know what I was watching for. So I think when we do 6 and 7 and we see what our defects of character are, How does that show up for you? How does selfishness show up for you? What does it sound like? Emily didn't call me back the other day. Like it's it has something for me to I'm watching for it, so I need to know what I'm watching for specifically to me. And we each have different things. The bondage of self looks differently on different people. You know, some people are all about money, power, and prestige, right? Oh, I don't make enough money. I need a new car. And some people, that's not me. That's not my version of bondage of self. I don't worry about that. I have duct tape on my car and I don't care. Now that's on a recording. I kind of care sometimes, but I usually don't care, right? I mean, but some people would not be able to live with that, right? My stuff's elsewhere. Dishonesty, resentment, and fear. What does that feel like? What am I watching for? You know, I'm in these Facebook groups where, these AA, they have the name AA in the title, and so people are in there, and it's really interesting. You can tell the people that are working the steps versus the people that aren't. The people that aren't are constantly talking about the things that they're not happy with in the world. What do I do about it? And you get varied answers, and you can definitely tell the people in the steps by their answers too. You know, um, when these crop up, do we wait around? No. We were reminded to ask God, right? If I had the power to erase these things myself, I wouldn't need to ask God. So here I'm being reminded again to ask God for help, which I need to be reminded a lot. So here's the four little actions of step 10. It's telling us, I continue to watch when, not if, right? Because I'm not cured. These things are going to crop up. We ask God at once to remove them. Then we discuss them immediately, and make amends quickly. So those are the four things. Oh, and then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help is the fourth. And it doesn't say we talk about them all day, right? Because I'm not gonna call 5 people and talk about the same thing. I'm gonna turn my thoughts now to someone I can help. And for me, 10, 11, and 12 are so tightly together. They just can't operate without each other. That, helping others thing takes me out of myself. It's the fastest, easiest way to get out of self for me. Like, oh, I can't stand what I've been thinking about today. Because as I've been locked in thoughts. I'm accepting something to end a situation that I'm really actually not okay with, but it's the least bad option in the situation, and I don't like it. And there's a part of me that's laying over there on the floor kicking and screaming. Lots of cuss words, so I don't know how old she is. But I got to trust God and I got to move on so I can be useful. And isn't that funny? I had someplace to be at noon to serve. I don't have time to sit around and think about it, and then I need to check on some people today. So love and tolerance of others is our code. I know people who say they don't really like the word tolerance because how do you feel if I'm just tolerating you? And here's the thing. I know different people say things like fake it till you make it, and some people say no, that's compliance, not surrender. But for me it helps to try to act as if, I think about when I do that, sometimes I have miraculous things happen. Sometimes God comes in and softens my heart. Other times, no, I'm gritting my teeth. I don't want to be doing what I'm doing. I don't want to be like loving and tolerating, being accepting and kind. I like love, kindness, acceptance, especially if they're being awful to me. And I'm, these are things I need to think about today as I'm navigating a situation in my life. Yeah. And again, why am I doing any of this? Why am I doing any of this? Because I have a deadly disease. Because I have committed to this process. Because I believe it can work. Because I see that it's worked in you. And because I see what happens to people who stop doing this. I see how these things can take people out, if I don't do it. Someone close to me said that they think that their biggest problem has been the lack of step 10. And that they have relapsed many, many times, staying current and having a humility for this whole thing. I need to stay humble and realize that, it says resentments kill us. It said it, I think on page, was it 66, I think. It says that they are infinitely grave. For us, they are fatal. Do I believe that? Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen people go back out and they're locked in self. and it's painful and they can't take it. We had a guy here in my hometown. He could not get over that his brother died. He ended up hanging himself from a bridge. I saw him all the time, trying to come back, and all he would ever talk about is how angry he was about his brother, and he couldn't get this thing. Couldn't or wouldn't, I don't know. But yeah, so it's pretty, this is just life and death stuff. That's all. Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, when I think about step 10, I kind of laugh because, I've sponsored people where they think that step 10 is not very important because um they think it's a repeat of step 4 and 5. Like we're not supposed to do 100 4s and 5s with our sponsors like we're supposed to do with step 10 instead. It's supposed to be a spot check, like every day. um I just don't understand why people think that a step 4 and 5 is the answer when step 10 is when we're supposed to spot check it every day. And it just I don't know. I just don't get why people think that. But that's their program, I guess. Um, but I just know that for me, it's very important that I, catch these little things every day. That whether I'm angry or irritated, or I'm just not tolerant of another person, I need to write these down, immediately, and then I usually either text my sponsor or I'll call her depending on what's going on, throughout those days. But most of the time I see her like every week because we go to the same meetings. So I just talk to her about them. But I do just like to reiterate that, we do continue this for our lifetime. We're never done with these things. um, some people think it's just a one and done, and it really isn't because every day something's going to come up. We're human and we're alcoholic, and we just let every little thing bother us. Sometimes it depends on our spiritual state, but we have to catch these things because if we live in resentment, then it just causes even more problems. And we should not be living in resentment because then we're just going to be causing more harm for other people around us. Yeah, because it says, then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. We're supposed to stay out of ourselves as much as possible. And when we do a step 10, that's kind of getting it out on paper and talking to God and our sponsor about it. And we're supposed to help other people. So like if we have a newcomer in the meeting, we need to focus in on the newcomer, because it's not about us, it's about helping the new person. And if we're sitting in ourselves, then we're not going to help that person. And then love and tolerance of others is our code. I had to learn that really early on because I can't tolerate people like just the stupidity like on the roads nowadays. And working with people, because I work from home, but like I get work emails and I'm thinking, what are they talking about? Like they're just like confusing everything, and then they're loading things in the computer system wrong, and I'm just like, why, when you know what to do it is right, and you're just like completely doing it wrong. So I'm not having to go behind them and like fix everything. So that just gets on my everlasting nerve. And I can get resentful, but when I catch these things, through a step 10, I'm able to ride out my frustrations and look at my part. It's not just about them, it's about why I'm frustrated and annoyed. And I don't have much patience. So for me, that is a problem. I have to look at why I'm not patient, you know and ask God to help me, have a little bit of patience. And he has his ways of revealing that to me. And I just have to live live that as much as I can. It says when we discuss we discuss them with someone immediately, that's calling your sponsor, and just telling them what's going on. They will have their days as well, and they understand. It doesn't matter what it is or what it's about. They're not there to judge us. They're there to help us and to catch these things when they crop up. And most of the time, it's my character defects that are in the way. Because I think that it's not my problem, and it really is my problem. Especially when I'm being lazy or procrastinating on something. So I definitely think that's very important, to have God in this as well. We pray and ask God to help us. Um, so that's all I have for that. You want to read the next paragraph, Elizabeth?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mhm.
And this is what they call the 10th step promises. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. I never actually always got that wrong. Sorry. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react, so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. I think about, when I read this, I think about the people that first read this, that when the book came out, these people that were so hopeless, and I see how much they're explaining. It's like, what do I have to do to get there? What do you mean? I want to be like that. But it says, for by this time, right? By this time means that I have worked the steps. I'm working the steps. They're talking about this program of recovery that's in the book. It's not, people get confused about what AA is. They think, oh, it's just going to meetings. No. I love the analogy. That's like going to the gym and looking in the mirror and expecting to get in shape. Go to the gym, look in the mirror, and go home. Like, no. Got to do some work. But, and I love that. We have a neutral attitude. It's and my sane reaction to alcohol is that I don't drink it. It could be because I know I'm an alcoholic. That's the sane reaction. I'm now, since this is an AA meeting, I can tell you that I'm working in Codependence Anonymous, and one of the things I'm learning in my work there is that I don't stop to consider that someone is a good partner for me. Is this a good idea? Right? I entered into a relationship with somebody with 3 months sober. Was that a good idea? Probably not. I mean, did I think about that? No, of course not. No, I just plowed ahead on my own little self-will about what Elizabeth wanted in the moment, Um, that wasn't a sane and sound idea. Right? A sane reaction to life. Maybe, hey, Elizabeth, you got this problem. Maybe you ought to check this out with some people, right? Go to some gods with skin on, ask them what they think, you know? And trust that intuitive thought that says, like Jim, he had a vague sense he wasn't being too smart. Did I get those? Hell yeah. Did I ignore them? Yes, I did. All right. So it's like operating in a way in my life to have humility, to slow down, trust God. Sometimes it means I don't get what I want in the moment. It means that I can't operate like an impulsive child in the world and think that I'm not going to have consequences, because I do. Luckily I didn't have to drink over that, but I could if I continue. I remember when I was very first sober, sitting near a glass of beer that my stepmother had on the table, and I was so scared it was going to jump down my throat. I stared at that thing. I was like, oh God. Um, but today I can be around, I can appreciate that other people can enjoy, they say that alcohol, the purpose of alcohol is to help someone enhance an already positive experience or help someone cope with a negative experience. It does do something to people, obviously, or they'd be drinking something a lot cheaper, if they didn't want the effect. So it tells us people drink for the effect, right? I drank for the effect. I just couldn't stop. The effect for me became consequences, right? Internal and external. But can I appreciate that other people are enjoying it? Yeah, of course. I don't need to take that away from them for me to be okay. I don't need to make my life smaller. I don't need to, I can walk in the world and be like, okay, cool. I can respect the traditions that we don't have an opinion about it. If we had a negative opinion for as AA, if AA had a negative opinion towards alcohol, alcoholics wouldn't want to come to us to get help. Well, those people hate alcohol. I love drinking. Like they wouldn't want to come to us. So we uphold that tradition. I love the safe and protected. That's so beautiful. I just love that. And I think about that a lot, that when I'm in fear about what's going on in my life, I can remember that as long as I continue to trust my higher power, I can be safe and protected. And then, of course, the last sentence of that paragraph is so important. Again, it's emphasizing action, so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And the book has been telling us over and over and over and over again how we do that. And we're going to learn more about that in the next step. So go ahead, Emily.
Mhm. Yeah, I like this paragraph. I love these promises. It just reminds me that if I do, the step 10, we are able to fight against anything, or anyone, even alcohol, drugs, whatever you want to fill in as your ism, and then, our sanity will return, we will stop obsessing and, stop acting out on these things. Um, and we will hopefully lose our interest in those things, drinking, drugging, sex, whatever it may be. And I feel like, people that don't work, step 10, or even a 4 and 5, we're sticking our hand on that stove and we're like, no, it's not hot. We're playing with the fire and we're like, oh, it's not going to burn us. And then we, end up in the hospital with like a 4th-degree burn or a 3rd-degree burn on our hands because, we're playing with that stove. And, that's just not how I want to live my life. I have to be sincere, honest, and thorough with, my 10th step every single day. Because if I'm not, then I'm sticking my hand on that stove. I'm playing with my life. I don't want to do that. I'm supposed to be the example, as a sponsor, and other people like newcomers around me. And, if I'm not doing this, then, what am I doing with my life? It's just a matter of either I take the action and stay sober, and be in fit spiritual condition, or, I'm fighting for my life and I'm, living on the beam of, oh, am I going to relapse? Am I going to take that first pill or, act out on something? You know, I liked to drink, but I also liked the effect. So I liked both. But I had to come to a point in my life where I had hit rock bottom, and even though I liked the taste of alcohol, I had to call it quits because the effect produced by the alcohol, and for me, was just going to get me in even more trouble. I had consequences beyond consequences of drinking. And I just had to, get to a point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I do like that sentence. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. God will take care of us as long as we stay close to him. And, he will show his way through us, in the meetings, through a sponsor, a sponsee. He has his ways of working through us and through other people. And you know, I've never felt unsafe around AA, you know, or NA or whatever you attend. You know, I love going to the meetings, and I love, you know, working with other people, and, you know, doing meetings and all that. You know, I've felt very safe, and, you know, I can be honest and vulnerable, you know, outside of the meetings. I can't do that, you know, because people just don't understand, and that's okay. But, you know, that's why we have these meetings in these rooms. You know, we're able to, you know, show, you know, what we feel, and, you know, what we're struggling with for sure. And, you know, that is my experience, you know. Yeah, I think that's all I have, but I do have a note here. It says we straighten out mentally and physically. You know, we learn how to live. You know, like we have a program now. We know how to, you know, inventory it. You know, tell people how we feel and what we're dealing with, and, you know, our sponsors understand that. You know, because they've gone through that themselves. You know, and I'm able to help other people, whether it's a sponsor or just a newcomer in the room. You know, I'm able to share some experience, strength and hope, you know, and help them. So that's kind of like the thing that I look forward to, you know, every day. So it's not just about me and what I deal with, but with other people, because they deal with it too. So definitely do like these 10-step promises. All right, I'll read the next paragraph. Unless you have some.
Wait, I want to say one more thing. When we look back at the other paragraph and it says we ask God at once, there's a really cool, I heard this from a friend of mine in the Primetime AA group. His name is Craig. He said, and I may have said this in here before, but he said, you know, the very first thought that comes into my head, I don't have control over, but I have control over what I do with it. And there's a wonderful tool called the Emmett Fox Golden Key to Prayer. And what it means, so if I have something that's continuing to bother me and come into my head, you know, because I can have those days. I wake up in the morning and my friend says it's like a vulture waiting at the end of the bed. Hey, you're awake. I see you're awake. Hey, you know what? You're not appreciated at work. You know, like it'll just start talking to me. And if I can snip, like, nope, nope, and turn, nope, nope, not going to do that today. God help me, God. And the golden key to prayer says, whenever I have a disturbing thought, I start thinking about God. That's all I have to do. And I'll tell you how I used this once. I had someone I had a really strong resentment against. And if I told you the whole story, you'd be like, oh God, of course, Elizabeth, you have a resentment against that person. I see why. And I did inventory. It took a long time for me to get to the other side of this one for sure. It you know, definitely didn't happen as fast as I wanted it to. But one night in the middle of the night, I woke up and I was in perimenopause. So if you've gone through that, you treasure your sleep. You don't want to, you know, their sleep is just like, you just have to let go of sleep. Like, I hope that helps somebody. I had to just let go of it. You don't get the, oh, let's have 8 hours of sleep a night. You know, it's nothing like that. It's just like, you know, you wake up at 3 or up till 5, then maybe you get to go back to, it's just really weird. Well, I woke up at 3 and I started thinking about this person. I was like, oh my God, I don't want her to steal my sleep. And I remembered hearing about the golden key to prayer in the primetime group. So I decided that I would try it, even though I didn't think it would work. And so I started thinking, God, 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 God. That's all I could do. It was just like God, 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 God. I just kept doing that. And and the whole time, you know, I was thinking, this is stupid. It's not going to work. But you know what? It did work. It took longer than I thought it would. But I was able to knock that thought out of my head and go to sleep. And I have used it so many times where I just think about my higher power and I focus in on that to get that other thought out. Because there's no point in me thinking about something that's sitting around bothering me, especially if there's no action I can take and there's nothing I can do about it. But my friend Craig emphasizes that the faster you can knock the thought out, you don't give it any weight. Emmett Fox talks about this too. You don't sit around and give it more gas. You just, nope, nope. All right, just what can I do to get to not think about that? And I, you know, I've tried this many times. It's helped me so much. And I realized the futility of me sitting around thinking about things that bother me. There's no point. I'm just torturing myself, right? It's so, yeah. I just wanted to point that out, that at once is very helpful. So do you want me to read the next one? Let me get my glasses where I put them. Okay. Oh, did you want to read the next one? You want to read it?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'll read the next one. Yeah, we're in the middle
Okay.
of 85. It is easy to let up on our spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day that we must carry the vision of God's will into our activities. How can I how can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We exercise our willpower along this line. All we wish it is the proper use of the will. Much of us has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who has all knowledge and power. If we carefully followed directions, we had begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We had begun to develop this vital sixth sense, which must go further, and that means more action. Yeah, I have next to daily reprieve the relief, because we have relief on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. God gives us relief. We don't have to stress and worry and all that. And every day we must carry the vision into God's will, into all of our activities. I have to ask God and, let Him be a part of every single thing in my life, whether it's making a decision or um, going to a meeting. Like I have to look at my, trying to think of the word, my priorities and my motives. I have to ask God, how can I be helpful in any way, shape, or form? Whether it's a sponsee or, making a personal decision, buying things, whatever it may be. I have to, ask God, to guide me. It says we can exercise our willpower along this line of all we wish it is the proper use of the will. We have to ask God what is His will for us. It's not about us and our decisions. We have to ask Him and to guide us. Because otherwise, I'll make the wrong decision, and that's not God's will. It's not about me anymore. Um, and then if we have carefully followed directions, we had begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. Usually it becomes very clear of like the next direction or decision that I make. As long as I'm fit and spiritual, in asking God what to do. I don't second guess myself. I don't resent the things that I do or make or how I treat a person or any of that. I'm pretty content with myself, and I know that I'm pretty spiritually fit when I make decisions or act a certain way or whatever. um and then I just love the last sentence before we hit step 11. But we must go further. That means more action. We never stop taking some type of action into this program. We have to continue this every single day, all day, every day. And we just don't stop just because we get sober once. I've seen many people that get sober and then they just stop doing everything and they wonder why they relapse or, they end up dead. Like we have to continue to do all of this to the best of our ability every single day. Because the minute I stop doing something, I'm just going to fall off the beam. And then, my character defects are going to get in the way. And then, everything else will just fall apart. I can't be helpful to anyone else or, to even God, I definitely like this too because, it just reminds me that I have to continue to do all these things every day. And we're not one and done. That's for sure. I think that's all I have for that. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Emily. You know, I I mean, yeah, does it sound like we graduate? Because it's not sounding you said something a few minutes ago that people diminish the step 10. And I come from I actually heard someone say, I don't know, step 10, why do step 10? Just go back and do a 4-step every year. What? And I was like, bingo, that's what I grew up with. There it is. That's what I always heard. That they just diminish the importance of this. But like I really have experience. Sometimes I mention how much time I have only because It's 37 years because it's gotten more painful not to do this work, not less painful. I don't know. I don't know if it's true for other people, but it is for me. And so it is important that I continue, to do this. And that they keep telling us that constantly, right? It's every day. Again, whose will, not mine, and I really needed to hear this today. I literally was doing something right before the meeting that was about me making sure somebody knows how I feel about something. I was, I was crafting, dude. I'm a writer. I can, yeah. And I have a resentment. I don't like I don't like something happening at all. And I'm not trusting God. I do need to run a couple things past my sponsor, and I actually asked her, can we talk today? But, praying for God's will, trusting God. And here's the cool thing about it too. What's really cool is when I really work this thing, when I really follow the principles of the program, things, even if something looks bad at the time, it ends up in my favor somehow. Something good will happen. I'm walking away from a sum of money in order to end things. That sum of money will come back into my life if my heart is right with what I'm doing. And that's what I got to check out with my sponsor and talk about with her. And let's see. And in those thoughts is, what is God's will here? I struggle with that sometimes. What is the vision of God's will? And sometimes for me, it means wait. I don't have it clear yet. So don't take any action. Don't do it yet. Don't do anything. The best thing that a person like me, a God player, can be told to do is nothing. Wait until it's clear. And it's going to say that again in step 11. And I like how it says, okay, so it says, from him who has all knowledge and power. I have to remember that. And I love, isn't it somewhere in chapter 4, it says that we have to be asked that. Can you consider that there's a power greater than you? Little entitled, grandiose, queen baby alcoholic, that you think you're God, Guess what? You're not. Hey, you're a speck. You're just like many of those posters of the universe. You are here. And it's like, it's like a little tiny, who the hell do I think I am, right? I don't have all knowledge and power. I want to, right? I wish I did, I think I do. I think I wish I did. What was that movie with Jim Carrey? I forget what it was called. The one about where he's God. Oh well, maybe one of you guys will tell me. And then
God
it says
Almighty.
God, yeah, there you go.
Mighty.
So it says that we have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. And for me, I can't have the sixth sense if I don't slow down and let those answers come, right? And it's going to talk about that in step 11 more. So, this 10, step 10 and then step 11, it's, how do I explain this? So it is like a mini step 4. I learned how to write inventory. And for me, when when it says, we discuss this, we ask God to remove the selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And then we discuss this with somebody else. Is that enough? Can I do a verbal step 10, or do I need to sit and write inventory? I learned how to do it in step 4. And you know what? Sometimes I do. I need to sit down and put pen to paper. How do I know when I need to do that? When talking to someone and praying doesn't help, or if it's still there, if it keeps nagging at me. Because sometimes for me, I can't see something until I sit and write and do that structured, 4-column inventory. Like until I do it that way, I won't see it. Sometimes I like to hide things from myself. I don't want to think, oh, I still have that issue. And until I sit down and take the time to write it out, like I had a thing with a friend and it was still bothering me for 2 weeks, nagging at me, just kept thinking about it. My thoughts kept returning to the situation. It's like, okay, fine, I get it. I need to sit down and put pen to paper. And I did. And I realized that I had one of the things I had was I wanted her approval. I didn't like want to admit that to myself. And until I got quiet and I wrote it out, I saw, oh, I'm not getting her approval in something. And that was my problem, right? I'm still trying to get something from the world to fill me up other than a relationship with God. you know, and I didn't want to see it. So it wasn't until I sat down. So that's how it works for me anyway. All right, step 11, guys. Woo, woo, woo. What time is it? Oh,
12.
should we start?
I think we should stop.
Yeah, let's stop on step 11.
All right, let me stop the
But
recording.
yeah, I will say this. Wait, let me say this. So step 10, again, that's about me clearing the way to have a relationship with God. I need to clear Elizabeth out. She needs to go. We're looking at how I'm blocked. This morning, all I did was walk around thinking about this situation that I'm in right now, that I'm trying to decide about what I'm going to do. And I don't like any of the decisions. None of them are good. And so, and I'm locked in that. So do I know what God wants me to do? No, not as long as I'm sitting around thinking about my plans and designs. And do you know what I mean? So then step 11 is about me strengthening that relationship so that I can get that inspiration. So 10, clear out Elizabeth. 11, build that relationship more with God so I can be in that place where I can have inspiration. Okay, thanks.
Mhm.